We're all excited to have you here. I can't believe how well we filled the room today. Thank you all for coming. My name is Anna Weiss. I'm one of the volunteers, one of many volunteers here at the Italian Cultural Center. And I'm here to introduce my colleague, Martin Giesso. I've had the pleasure of meeting Martin Giesso when he first joined us.
3 years ago, yeah.
No, I would think it was more than that.
More than that?
Può darsi, but it was right after his publication of his family history, which I'm sure he will talk about today. Possibly, quite possibly. I understand that it was one of our other colleagues, Leo Colsant, who brought you aboard because Martin was a part of a Dante discussion club. That was like an offshoot of one of our events here at Casa Italia. So Martin has been instrumental in helping us publish our second volume in the Italian language, Donne Italiane a Chicago, which is going to be published very, very soon. He proofread the whole book, the whole book, and there's over 300 pages here, and I can't tell you, he read it on a microscopic level, and he caught every error that I would have missed. And beyond that, he even did research above what was already presented in the original volume, and part of that research was going down to the Newberry Library and reporting back with some of the new material he had found for it. So Martin was born in Argentina. He has a degree in anthropology from the Universidad de La Plata, and then he came here to the US from Argentina to pursue graduate studies in anthropology at the University of Chicago. And so please join me in welcoming him. I'm so excited to have him as part of our team and to be presenting to all of you today. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Anna. And it's a real pleasure for me. I thank you very much to all of you for coming. Very much. I have to also thank especially to Dominic, who gave the idea for me to do this presentation, and to all of those who in one way or the other mentioned that you had some distant relatives in Argentina, or they went to Cordoba, or I remember my grandfather had a cousin who I don't know much about, and we've lost contact. So it's all reminds us that Italians have been traveling and interconnecting in different countries and different worlds and different circumstances. So I made this presentation for today from scratch. This is not something that I had in the drawer and I pulled out for today. So you have to understand that I have been doing it slowly but with a clear idea in mind. So we're going to see some slides, try to illustrate some videos. Another important thing was that in March of last year we had a Zoom event. I was in Buenos Aires, and I came up with the idea of doing something about the place where the immigrants arrived and were hosted, and several of you were there and seemed to enjoy particularly the fact that they were given room and board for several days for free. That seemed to ring a bell. There's something interesting going on here. So we're going to talk about that today and many other things. The topic is so broad that I want to say, what exactly is this going to be? This is going to be from when the first Italians arrived with the Spanish conquistadors in the 16th century to Domenico Modugno and Rita Pavone, which in the 60s end up the grand story of Italian immigration. So, well, that's still like 400 years, but I'll make it short. two of the books that I love the titles, I love the contents, particularly the one on the left, which I wrote, Immigrants in the Land of Promise. People were going to places where they knew they will be living better. That's a comparison of Italians in Buenos Aires and in New York in the height of the Great Migration. On the right, I don't have that book, but I always like the title, Argentina, l'altra patria degli italiani. And we're going to talk about that. And in the center, a picture of my paternal great-grandparents who were the immigrants, and seven of their 6 children, which is in the cover of the book, in 1906. So just to tell a little bit about, now that you know that I'm from Argentina, I grew up there, but I didn't get to know any of the immigrants that came. They were 7 of my 8 great-grandparents. They had all died before I was born, and then a set of second great-grandparents too, because one of the 8 was born in Buenos Aires, 1872. So we're talking about more than 150 years ago, long time. So there is so that you get a sense of what is my real attachment to the experiences, the lives of these immigrants. It's really distant, it's really hard to reach, because I don't have letters, I don't know I don't have their voices, I can't tell, I can tell very little about how their lives were. Nevertheless, so Vincenzo is not here, but he reminded me about this Edmundo de Amicis. He wrote a book, Cuore, and in the book there's a chapter called Dagli Appennini alle Ande, where there's a story of a young boy who travels from Italy to Buenos Aires in search of his mother. And so this is a description of his arrival. Il 27 giorno dopo quello della partenza arrivarono per una bella aurora rossa di maggio, precisely this month, quando il piroscafo in the boat gettava l'ancora nell'immenso fiume della Plata sopra una riva del quale si stende la vasta città di Buenos Aires, capitale della Repubblica Argentina. Quel tempo splendido gli parve di buon augurio, so a great day, and the sense of things are going to be great. Era fuori di sé dalla gioia e dall'impazienza. He was anxious to see his mother after probably several years. Sua madre era a poche miglia di distanza di lui, and she was very close to him. Tra poche ore l'avrebbe veduta, ed egli si trovava in America. This is the other thing. So at the beginning, imagine 27 days on board of a ship. So these were, this apparently took place around the 1860s or 70s. It was written in 1886. So the voyages were long, were dangerous, were hard, really hard, 27 days aboard. And then when he says, si trovava in America, so Italians refer to any country of the Americas as l'America. That famous expression, fare l'America, and to go and if not make a fortune, but make money, have a good life. So si trovava in America, nel nuovo mondo, e aveva avuto l'ardimento di venirci solo. He came by himself. How many children traveled by themselves, we don't know, but definitely something that has happened several times. But you've probably seen this map. This map has been circulating in different media. This is important because many people say, yes, in Argentina there are many Italians. Well, there are different estimates. Some say, everybody says that at least 50% of the population has some Italian ancestor, usually parents, grandparents, great-grandparents. Some even say more, 60, 70%. It's impossible to calculate, partly because, as you can imagine, they intermarried with people of other national origins. So Argentina is followed by Uruguay, the small country. Argentina, Uruguay, and then Paraguay. You probably are not aware of that, but many Italians went to Paraguay. Well, both Paraguay and Uruguay have very small populations. That's partly why the percentage is so high. In countries like the US and Brazil that have a very large population have a much lower percentage of oriundi, so the descendants of Italians, and then the list goes on. But there's really a big difference between the first, second, third, and the rest of them. So one of the things that this presentation is trying to understand the impact of Italian immigration in Argentina. Of Uruguay, I know very little, but some things can be applied there too. Okay, now as I mentioned about the place where the immigrants arrived, we're going to watch a 10-minute video. It's called El Hotel de los Inmigrantes. Why is it? It's not really a hotel, but it's a place where they stayed, where they ate. They were given food every day up to, well, it's the video tells all of the details.
Volume 47. Volume 54.
The Immigrants Hotel was built to receive, provide services, house and distribute the thousands of immigrants who arrived in our country from all over the world. The complex consisted of several pavilions for disembarkation, placement, administration, medical care, services, lodging, and transfer of immigrants. A group of buildings like a citadel. Its construction began in 1906. It was in charge of the company Udina and Mosca and was carried out in the following way. First, the landing stage.
First, the landing stage building was built. In that building, those who controlled the arrival of ships to the port worked. In addition, luggage was checked, and there were also people who worked on health control. When the immigrant boarded the ship, the inspector would ask for the documentation that had been required from the immigrant to leave the port of origin. If that documentation complied with what was requested, then the immigrant could enter the country. Second, the labor office. The employment office was where they found jobs. It had different departments, right? Which coincided with the different names of the railroad. For example, if someone had to go to a place inland that faced west, well, they would go with the Western Railroad. The employment office was in Building 2, at the front of what was the complex. Around 1913, it had rooms for teaching men and women how to operate agricultural machinery. There was an office for placement and teaching domestic chores inside the hotel. Identity cards were also made. Third, the hospital, equipped with the most modern elements of its time, where thousands of immigrants who arrived in Buenos Aires were treated, suffering from illnesses related to the hardships of the trip or poor nutrition. The hospital is located where building number 5 of the National Immigration Office is today. What was done was a health check, and then from there it was decided what to do with the passengers. In some cases, well, if there were common illnesses, they were treated in the hospital, and if there were infectious diseases, they were referred to the leper hospitals on the Martin Garcia route. Finally, the hotel. It was a 4-story building. On the ground floor was the dining room, with large windows overlooking the garden, the kitchen, and the auxiliary rooms. In the accommodation pavilion, well, there was the dining room, meals were served in 3 shifts, the hotel could house up to 3,000 immigrants. Each of these floors had 4 dormitories, with a capacity for 250 beds in each of them, which meant that 3,000 people could be housed in the entire hotel. But in reality, the hotel was the entire complex. Building 6 was simply the accommodation pavilion. Here, the immigrants slept and ate. The stay was free for 5 days by regulation, that is, by law, but it could be extended in case of illness or failure to find a job, because here, the immigrant had to leave with his job. The space that was used as a hotel is now home to the Immigrants Museum. The project to create an immigration museum recognizes as pioneers the communities that from the early 1970s to the present have persisted in this initiative by promoting or supporting the efforts made to this end. By the National Directorate of Migration. On August 20, 1985, the Ministry of the Interior issued Resolution 879/85. Paving the way for the creation of the Immigration Museum, Archive, and Library under the jurisdiction of the National Directorate of Migration. Five years later, the National Executive Branch declared the former immigrant hotel complex a National Historic Monument. In 1997, the Ministry of the Interior created the Immigrant Museum Complex program. The entire building of the Immigrant Hotel and its surroundings under the jurisdiction of the National Directorate of Migration were designated as the venue. The Immigration Museum reopened its doors with a new proposal developed today on the 3rd floor of the hotel, the floor where the former dormitories were. Every September 4th of each year, Immigrants' Day is celebrated, commemorating the provision issued by the first triumvirate in 1812, remembering the arrival of immigrants to the country. Back then, Argentina offered immediate protection to individuals from all nations and their families who wished to settle in the territory. We are brothers, children, grandchildren of those who once came. They say that in one way or another we all descend from the ships. This space, once a hotel, now a museum, surely holds in some of its corners a story, a pain, a hope experienced by our ancestors, at least for a few days or just a few hours. Without a doubt, this space was once their home. Is that why when we enter for the first time we can feel that we have already been here?
I hope you enjoyed this video. By the way, I left you some pieces of paper and pens so that you, if you want to write comments, questions to ask at the end. By the way, there will not be a quiz at the end. Don't worry about that. I would have liked to do that. Okay. So,
In italiano sarebbe tanta roba. So many
things,
so many feelings,
yeah.
so many history. Yeah, tanta
Yeah,
roba.
The video has its emotional parts, yeah, definitely. So, this is part again of the Italian diaspora and overall the immigration of people from Europe. In the 19th century, at the beginning, usually people talk, say 1820, that's the time when Europeans began leaving the continent for other places in the millions. Well, this just gives us a sense of the numbers. Let me open it a little bit. Briefly. So this tells us to what country the Europeans arrived, what was roughly the year when the larger waves began, and the number. As you see, the United States is on the top, very far from the rest of all. 32 million people came from Europe in these 200 years, really incredible amount. And followed by Argentina. For some reason, Canada is placed in the second, but Argentina is the second country, Brazil, Canada, those were the countries. But nevertheless, other parts of the world too, in Asia, Africa. The word diaspora means that people leave the country or region of origin and spread out sort of in a fan shape. It's not from point A to point B. So that's why people talk about the Italian diaspora. The diaspora really has two sides. One is the voluntary immigration, or not that pressured, and then the other one, because there's something catastrophic, dangerous, wars, persecutions. That type of diaspora is the one that tends to create communities that are very closed, and that people have the idea of going back to the place of origin when these dangerous end, and sometimes they don't go back anywhere. But diaspora has the general sense of being to many countries and not a specific place. So we talked about that, the high percentage of those who have some Italian ancestors, and also Argentina is the country outside of Italy that has the most Italian citizens. If you think by the timing, some of them were born in Italy. If the last wave of immigration ended in the 60s, you might say, well, these people are quite old. But then we have the children of many of them who also have the Italian citizenship too. So nearly 1 million people have that. And then the Italian influence in Argentina is enormous, and it is everywhere, literally everywhere. That's what when people travel to Argentina realize that from day one. The studies about immigration to Argentina have been very popular, especially in the last 30 years or so, and increasingly there are more and more studies, some by scholars, others by individuals that want to know about their origins, their roots. So both things come together, and the internet really has had a great role in that, in allowing us to dive into this distant past. And because sometimes people don't know where their ancestors were born. They have no recollection. Okay, and this chart is meant to bring another topic. Here we see the Italian immigration to Argentina, and in these others we see the Spanish immigration. So after the Italians, the people that came from Spain to Argentina after the 1850s formed the other very, very, very large community that there is in Argentina. In a sense, if you don't have Italian ancestry, you have Spanish ancestry of these people, usually a mixture of both. So as you can see, only in very few years, the Spanish arrived in larger number than the Italians. Oops, sorry, Rob. Okay, you probably are aware with some of the most well-known Argentines who have a clear Italian ancestry. Messi, obviously, and Pope Francis are the ones that everybody can recognize. But here I put some of the others, some you might know. Manu Ginóbili, the basketball player. Piazzolla, those who like music probably have heard about him. And some of the places where their ancestors came from. Cesar Pelli, he was the designer of a building that never got to be built along the lake shore that would have been the tallest building in Chicago, but he built some of the highest buildings in Asia. He was from Toscana. You probably know others. Enrique Finocchieto, you will know who he is, but he was a very famous physician, because he invented many devices that were used after that. And René Favaloro, also a very famous surgeon, Argentine surgeon, who also brought to us the bypass surgery. So many million people owe their life to this man of Sicilian ancestry. And Funk, you probably are not, only very few of you know who Funky was, but he was a famous car racer of the 1940s and 50s. He won many international competitions.
Yeah. He had the exclusive dealership for Ferrari.
For Ferrari,
Yeah.
yes.
In Argentina.
There's a monument to him that has the car, and he's standing outside of the car that my daughter has a picture there. But this is just the video mentions September 4, 1812. If you go to Argentina that day, September 4, you will see parades of people with their traditional dresses from different communities. So in 1810, the first government, locally established government, and that's when the changes begin to happen from the Spanish past to this new republic that is growing eventually. So shortly after, the government really realizes, well, we're going to attract people from abroad. And here it has some very important elements. People of all nations are welcomed. Okay? You will have full enjoyment of the rights of humans in society. Okay? There is no thing that, well, you have to become an Argentine citizen in order to buy property, get a job. No, anyone can do that. Okay? You will, if you are a farmer, you will be given land. Okay? Either the government or private companies who bought parcels of land, subdivided it and offered land and basic things, and when they began producing, they repaid back in part of their crops that they cultivated. So people will enjoy the same privileges as the natives of the country. The part about the mines is also mentioned there, but so from the very beginning there's the interest, but this is a wonderful map, and there are nearly 900 associations all over Argentina, even in Tierra del Fuego, in the southern tip of the country, form-based either Italian schools, theaters, different institutions that unite people around either the national identity or local, say the Friulani in one city, or the Calabresi in another. So there's even, this was made by the Centro Italo-Argentino de Altos Estudios. So the university has a section for the study of these Italian institutions in the country, the federations. There's different levels of organization throughout. Okay, now this is what I thought that we're going to go back to the present day to understand this presence of Italianness in current Argentina. So those who travel to Argentina notice some very peculiar things that occur there but are different from other places, and I chose four of them. Beginning with they all have to do with food, of course. Fresh pasta factories. In every neighborhood of a city in Argentina, you will have at least one place where, on Sundays or other days of the week, you can go and buy different types of pasta made that day. This is a sort of a traditional thing that is part of the everyday life. There are, in Buenos Aires alone, there are 435, which is huge. Just a few of them, the ones that are in the neighborhood, or the ones that you know that are better than the others. Then pizzerias, there are around 1,000. So these are only the ones that are exclusive for pizza making. And the third one is the production of ice cream. So when the immigrants arrived to Argentina, one of the things that they noticed was the food production, the quality of the food, and that's an integral part of the life. So ice cream places are very common. As I put there, some have names like Vesuvio, Los Alpes, or names of cities, Venezia, Laderia Venezia, so on and so forth. There are also small chains, and they're everywhere, literally everywhere. There's even this new one that I put, Luciano's, that has stores abroad. It's very, very renowned nowadays. And the last one is, it might seem not that significant, but it is for me. In Argentina, there are two types of dessert, this thing that we call here in the US, in Italy, panettone. Okay? But we use the term pan dulce for these two varieties of them. We'll see a photo of them later. So what is the pan dolce? Pan dolce is this type of product that is typical of Liguria and that exists there, that is made in local places. You don't buy it in, it's not the industrial type, which is the panettone type, but they all have this name of pan dulce. So another very peculiar thing that you would notice if you go at the end of the year. Those four things. It could be many other things. Here there are some photos of two very traditional pizzerias. One of the things is that in the one on the left you can only eat there standing up. And there are very small tables. People stand, eat in a few minutes, and then they leave. Same thing in the other one, but there's also a dining place there too. Some of the pizzerias have, well, they all tend to have brick ovens, and they say, which I don't know if that's true, that the fire has been going on since the beginning. The fire doesn't go off. They always, and because they produce hundreds and hundreds per day, so that's what they say. I'm not 100% sure if that's the case. Of the ice cream, there's another very peculiar thing. The one on the right is the Cadori, a very good ice cream place. They were from northeastern Italy, as you see, where they speak German and Italian. But on the picture to the left is something that people also find very curious, that not only you buy the individual portion, but you can buy a quarter kilo, half kilo, or 1 kilo. Normally, if you go for a dinner, you say, I'm taking a kilo of ice cream, and you go and you buy it in these huge quantities. So that's another very characteristic thing. And here there's a picture of the pan dolce, which again is very flat. It doesn't look like a fungus. You can buy them here in Italy. I think that's the only place where they sell them. Okay, that again introduces us to this overwhelming presence of things Italian, because again everything is transformed in the host country by themselves, by copying elements and recreating different things. Well, what are the categories that we use? If we say Italo-Argentino or Italo-Argentina, that's a person that was born in Italy and emigrated to Argentina and lived there for a number of years. If you're the son of immigrants, you cannot say I'm Italian. Nobody says I'm Italian, I'm Spanish, I'm French, I'm German. No. You say I am of Italian origin, of Spanish origin, or whichever, the origen, and you don't say, as we say in the US, you don't give the nationality of your ancestors. A term very much used is colectividad, which literally means a group of people united by some element. So, la colectividad italiana, who are they? And this could be a colectividad italiana, not necessarily born in Italy, but they have this sense of sharing and belonging, sharing traditions together, la colectividad. Okay? Criollo is a term very used in all of the Spanish Americas, referring to someone that has, that is from there, that the roots are there. So, for example, when immigrant men arrived from different countries, many married Criolla women, local women. That's the term used in general. And again, as mentioned earlier, America refers to all of the countries where they came. I look at the census a lot. Not everybody enjoys doing that. Sometimes it's quite difficult, the handwriting, the misspellings and all kinds of things, but it's where you can dive into the past. So it's curious, in the 1855 census, before the Italian unification, people were asked what nationalities, where is your nation of origin if you're a foreigner, and what city you come from. That's a great thing. So in many cases they put Italia. You might say, how is that? There was no Italy in 1855, but that happened. And I saw that many, in the case of northwestern Italians, like my ancestors, they write Sardo, not confused that they are from Sardinia, but the kingdom of Sardinia, which included northwest Italy at the same time. Okay, this has a lot of writing, but I will summarize. Before the Great Migration, Italians were present since the very beginning, but in small numbers. Among the first important, whose names some people would know in Argentina, are these Jesuit fathers who came. The Jesuit order was international and recruited people from different countries of the world. And so some of them, as you see by the last names, some were architects. For example, Primoli Bianchi built some of the churches from the 18th century in Argentina, and others. But again, these were individual, isolated. It's not that they were members of a specific group. In 1776, the southern part of the Viceroyalty of Peru is separated, and Buenos Aires becomes the capital, and that's why the city begins to grow and to attract especially merchants, foreigners, British, sometimes French or others, people from the US also have been settling there to do business. And the most famous case everybody in Argentina knows, Manuel Belgrano, the creator of the flag, of the national flag. His father was from Onelia in Liguria. Domenico Belgrano, nice grain. Belgrano, and his second cousin Castelli, Juan Jose Castelli, and the priest Manuel Alberti. Those are three historical figures that many people in Argentina know who they are. And they were 3 of the 9 members of the first autonomous government, not independent, but autonomous government. So 1 out of 3, that's quite an interesting element. So the Italian population keeps growing from that point on, and by 1830, they were the largest colectividad, the largest group of foreigners, and there was even a consul that the Savoy, the kings of Sardinia sent to look for the health of this community. And by 1855, again, very important census, but it's only for the city of Buenos Aires, and the 11% of the people living there were born in Italy. And if you add to that their children born there, this is quite a large number of people. So this is one of the reasons why that helps us understand a very early origin, large. Now we can, by 1855, we have stores, businesses, all kinds of things. Many people that had to do with the sailing, with transport, which at that time was majorly by sailboat. And they were living there and working there. This is the city of Buenos Aires in 1855 in the divisions by neighborhood, and very quickly this table shows that if you look at the percentage of people that were Italian living in the different neighborhoods, they are roughly between 10 and 20%. So Italians were living everywhere. That's essential, basic to understand why this uniqueness. Okay? Italians in general in Buenos Aires or in other cities lived throughout, and they were not concentrated in particular ethnic neighborhoods. That did not exist. That did not exist. Where's Dominic?
Yeah.
No, Dominic. Okay, Dominic asked me about the relation between the African population and the Italians. The second neighborhood, Montserrat, is the neighborhood where there was the largest community of, by 1855 they were freed. There was no more slavery. But in that community, Italians and people, Africans or African descent, were living side by side in large numbers. Yeah.
What was the climate compared to, like in Italy? Was it like Rome or Milan? Living in Buenos Aires,
Oh,
when people emigrated there.
The weather, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes, that's a good question. Yes, the central part of Argentina has a temperate climate, so it's, I would say, welcoming again. One, because we have the perception of that this is the ideal, not too warm, not too cold, but it's that. So there's no snow in the winter, so it's very temperate. It's very inviting, I would say. Patagonia in the south, which was at that time was not much populated, is not very inviting, and that's why there aren't that many people living there. And in the north, there's more population, but the central part, the agricultural part, that's has a climate similar to central Italy, I would say, more or less. Yeah.
Now, when we use the word parish, Louisiana has the word parish, but it means a county. Is that the same? Is that the same thing?
No, the parishes are fractions of a city that have a church where people would go for recording the birth, the wedding, and the death. So that's, in the censuses you look by parish. That's sort of the unit. What would in Chicago be the ward? There are 20 wards. So the parishes, the ones that you see there, the smaller ones were the older ones. People began moving west, up in that plan is west. Like in Chicago, people began moving west for the lots were bigger and the population was less dense. There were no factories. The air was purer. Okay? So, but those are the parishes. That's the meaning of the word here, parishes. Many of course have the idea that La Boca is where the Italians lived in Buenos Aires. Who hasn't heard about La Boca? Of course, also partly by the sports team, Boca Juniors. But that was because La Boca was a port, was the second port, or the earliest port. So people that had to do with the crafts of repairing ships and things that have to do with the marine life, which many of them, of course, were from Liguria or from coastal regions of Italy, concentrated there. But that gives a skewed idea that though the Italians are La Boca. No, not only La Boca. They were everywhere, literally everywhere. And I will show you. This is one of the pages from the 1855 census. Very hard to read sometimes the name, but they ask, in what city were you born? If you were born in the foreign land, as you see, what country? Italia, Uruguay, Italia, Padua, Venezia, Napoli, Milano, someone from Montevideo, Uruguay, Navarra, Spain, Gibraltar, England, Malta on the very top, and another one from Gibraltar. So this census really is a mine of data, because you can you can do a map house by house of who were these people, where were they from, and also very important, how many, if they were foreigners, how many years did they live there, number of years. This Spanish person lived 50 years there. The other was more recent arrivals, but it's fascinating. But it's only from the city of Buenos Aires. Again, this presentation is very much focused in Buenos Aires because of that's where I grew up and I'm more familiar with. But there were also immigrants who arrived to Bahia Blanca, for example, in southern province, to Rosario. Who has not heard of Rosario? Entre Rios to Concepción del Uruguay. The ships are entered into these two large rivers. And because Montevideo is right across from Buenos Aires, and there was a lot of movement between these two cities and the two countries also. So in 1869, the first national census took place. There you see, I put a photo of the pier where the boats, you can see them at the very end, where people came into the city. The river is very, very, very shallow. That's why the boats had to stop very far away, and people were transported into small boats or into carts and brought to here. And this was before the building of the Hotel de Inmigrantes that we saw. And in this, here we have a page of the 1869 census, and number 9, Juan Grossi, one of my great grandparents, he was a barber, peluquero. So he was Italian. It doesn't ask anymore for what city were you born, but they ask if you knew how to read and write, and this is for the handicapped people with physical or mental other abilities. So Juan Grossi, Giovanni Battista Grossi, 1869. He's the earliest one that I found. The second census is in 1895. Unfortunately, the state could not do them every 10 years like they did in Italy and here in the US. So there are some gaps in there. The map of this old map of Argentina is meant for you to show the railroad development. And so one of the things is that Italians participated as others, in the construction of the railroads, which spread like a fan into the interior of Argentina. And here I have some of my other relatives' last name, Elena. The oldest one is the grandmother who came because the mother died. She was a 73-year-old woman from Alassio in Liguria. So, and Italians remain to be the largest foreign population. The population began to grow enormously after the first census. Okay, and this I'm going to try to skip it, but some interesting things. This is the image of La Vergine di Buonaria, who is from Cagliari in Sardinia, and that was the image that was brought by the first settlers of the city of Buenos Aires. That's why the name is Buenos Aires. It's not because the climate was so beautiful, which is not, it's quite random, so it was called the port of Buenos Aires. The city was called the city of the Holy Trinity, at the port of Bonaire. So she's represented with a ship. She's the patron of the sailors, which is very, very useful, very important. So really the first settlement was in what is now Santa Fe in 1527, and many Italians came. I had the list, but I took it out. Okay. Some of the changes that begin to happen, I mentioned the thing about La Boca. In 1825 is the first opera representation in Buenos Aires, and this is when the movement of singers and the presentation of operas and everything that has to do with the world of music and opera begins to develop and increase. Very important aspect of the many, but and then the architecture. The architecture begins to adopt new styles. The immigrants and even local people want to have buildings made with other styles, not the styles from the time of the Spanish and the Viceroyalty that were very simple, and they include different types of styles, and many were architects. This is one example, a really very important example. The Palace of San Jose, built. If you see the photo, you say, well, this looks like if it were in Tuscany or somewhere in Italy, a house built like a Roman house that had 2 or 3 patios. Now I don't remember, probably 3, and the one at the entrance for the visitors, sort of the social patio, then the family patio, and then the patio for and with the rooms all around it. This is a very special place because in the chapel of this palace is where we got married. And the other curious thing, just a curiosity, in 1849, around that time, it had a plumbing system. It was the first building that had plumbing, even before the White House did have plumbing. The Entrerrianos are very proud of that fact. So really beautiful place. This is from a web page, Italian architects in Buenos Aires, so you can get a sense of them, who they are. Probably if you in Argentina, just a few of them are known, but as you see, the last names, they practically all end in the letter I, some end in O, but practically. These are the ones that came to Argentina, that either studied in Italy and came already trained and ready to work, hired by someone in the government or private, and then either lived all their life and died there, or at least spent a good time and built a lot. That's why, again, this idea that the city looks so European. This is one example. Probably nobody knows the name of the architect, but it's in what in Lombardy they call the Liberty style. Anyone knows what the Liberty style or Art Nouveau, Jugendstil, has different names in different countries, but they all have in common this, that there's a lot of decoration with vegetable motifs, and everything seems very light and different from the rest. What is interesting is that studies have shown that the children of immigrants who became wealthy and who made it were the patrons of this type of style, because they want to differentiate themselves from the more traditional French style of architecture, the thing that the old money like to build. This is the new money, sort of to speak So there it is quite common. You see in homes, in cemeteries. There are also many liberty. Modernismo in Catalonia. It has different names. So. Francesco Tamburini, very famous because he was the main builder of the Teatro Colón to the right and the House of Government. He died very young, that's why his work was followed by other architects, but Tamburini. This is the second Teatro Colón. Everybody has heard about the Teatro Colón. It's one of the most famous symphonic operistic theaters of the world because of the acoustics. It's very large. It occupies a whole block. Very important, but it's the second one. There was a previous one from 1850s to 1880s. Then this one dates to 1908. This is an important building in Buenos Aires. It's a little bit later. It's not in Liberty style or anything. It's very peculiar. And the architect is Palanti. He also built one very similar in Montevideo, in Uruguay. It's the Palacio Barolo. Their offices nowadays. So different types of architecture. And this one is from a architect from Bre, from Lombardy, somewhere in Lombardy, Virginio Colombo, in Art Nouveau style. The building that was the Unione Operaie Italiane, was abandoned for many years now. They are restoring it. Luckily, it's very beautiful, very ornamented with, as you see, human figures in the front, all kinds of things. The inside is not that interesting, you might say, but the bellissimo. And Francesco, just to mention a few, Francesco Gianotti, he built this pastry shop. It's not exactly a pastry shop, in the corner in front of the Congress. That is the building that you see on the back, and they're also restoring it from the early, from the 1910s, more or less. A beautiful building. This is very unusual. I mean, if you came to the presentation by Michelangelo, he showed a picture of one of the buildings by Francesco Salamone. He was born in Sicilia, but he came very young, so he studied in Argentina. And the governor of the province of Buenos Aires commissioned him to build in 60 cities these strange constructions, strange, that seem a little bit Art Deco, or Deco as we say here, a quasi-fascist type of architecture, but very unique. These are from two different cities, but I have not seen any of them. I have to acknowledge that these are not my photos. I didn't take them. He built entrances of cemeteries, municipal halls like the one to the left, but he also, sort of like Frank Lloyd Wright, he added all of these extra things to give the sense of a unity of style. Very peculiar, now they are slaughterhouses also. Some of the buildings were ruined because they were abandoned and difficult to protect, but now there has been an interest in this type of architecture. Vittorio Meano, he designed the National Congress, beautiful, really beautiful building that is in front of the one that we saw before. Someone said, but I could never find who it was, said that Buenos Aires was the capital of an empire that never existed. What did he mean by that? That this time, the turn of the century, is when the state or the private, everybody contributed to build these wonderful parks and buildings, and as if it were the capital of an expansive state, that there would be colonies, and the money from these, the tribute from these colonies would come to make this more magnificent place. But there was never an empire as such. But my God. So this is the architectural part. This, and I have a connection with that, in the main cemetery, which again is the cemetery for the newcomers, for the immigrants and their children, and that's where our families are. And a female architect, Itala Villa, was commissioned to do an underground cemetery with niches. And there you see, the picture in the middle is from, I took it from a web page. The other three I took it myself because my father's remains were there at one point, then we moved him out of there. It is quite in disarray, but it's really amazing construction. There are several galleries, and they all, I'm not sure they interconnect with each other, probably not. But this is from the 1940s and 50s. About the last name. Last names in general Italian, you can tell them apart easily. They end in the letter I, they have double consonants, so that couldn't be Spanish, they end their I. But Villa, or like my great-grandparents, Valle, V-A-L-L-E, it's the same in Spanish and Italian. How do you know? Villa, it was an Italian name, but there are Spanish people who have this exactly the same last name. But these are rarities. Okay, and the name Itala, obviously, but well, Fulvia, yeah. She studied at the university once. The curious thing is that until very recently, it was not known that she was the author. It was thought that it was a man, an architect, very famous, by the way, but so there was a rush to know about who Itala Villa was. So that's the architectural part. If you were in the mood for more, that's it. No more. No more. What's this about? Well, some other brief information. This is from the book. It separates when did people come to South America, North America, and to Europe. What is important here, this is the important thing. Most Italians went to countries of Europe. That's the reality. We cannot forget that. It was much closer, less riskier. There were many opportunities. People had already this chain migration circumstance. So 68%, 50%. So the vast, very large numbers went to other European countries. And there you can see that at the beginning, more people came to South America than to North America, meaning US and Canada, of course. And then the numbers reach an equivalence with time. But yes, everybody knows that Argentina and Brazil received more northern Italians than southern Italians. And the southern Italians began to leave Italy later on, and they did go to Brazil, Argentina, but they also came to the United States in large numbers. So you're not going to be quizzed about these numbers. What is this about the? You also know that from central Italy, a very few people emigrated. That's interesting to ask ourselves, why is that? And northern Italy, southern Italy. So one thing about immigration is that in the same province of Italy, there were towns where many people left, but other towns similar, nobody left. So this analysis, the studies of immigration have to go that minute to really understand, because the big question is, why did people leave? What, especially if you think 2 months on a ship, why would you do such a thing? And at that time there were many accidents. Well, even further on, but so we'll skip a little bit. So there were associations from very early on, and some of them still exist. And the Hospital Italiano de Buenos Aires, one of the most important ones, it was founded in 1853, and still exists and has expanded, moved locations, etc. It was created by a previous society that's the Sociedad Italiana de Beneficencia, so like a help society created the hospital. Then in Gualeguay, which I wanted to show in the map, in southern Entre Rios, it's very early on, they formed a group of people that provide the different services to the members. The Operaia Italiani, the one that you saw in the Rottening building, and the Banco d'Italia. That's another thing. You probably have, some of you have seen the documentary about AP Giannini. Well, that's in 1906, 1908. Well, this in 1874, Italian immigrants created a bank. So the issue of money lending was not a problem for many of these arrivaling people. Unione Benevolenza, still the building exists, very, very famous. It has a lot of plaques, the visits of many many prime ministers, Italian prime ministers. And in Raffaele, one of the agricultural colonies in Santa Fe, 1890, but these are just many of them. One of the things is that these societies help, not only it was the family and the relations, but these societies that help people improve their lifestyle, and without the domination of these padroni, or these local people that in other countries sort of manipulated them and made them work here and there without much benefit. Newspapers, there were many newspapers from the 1850s, L'Italiano, La Legione Agricola, etc. These are just some of them. This is also the time when there is this rivalry between the monarchists and the republicans. And so some of these I'm really not sure about in detail what was their purpose and so on. This is an interesting thing from a man who is allowed to come to Argentina, and it says where he will go to, etc. But we will skip it. He's an agriculturalist in the name of his Highness Umberto I. So this is before 1900 because he was killed that year. the Minister of Foreign Affairs asks the civil and military authorities of the Allied powers to let this man pass freely. Antonio Barreto, son of Giovanni, that is going to Buenos Aires with his wife Maria Gili and their daughter Giuseppina. He's the head of the family. This is the passport done in 1982, valid for 1 year. So he went to Santa Fe, to the agricultural colony in Santa Fe. Okay, and this is another very important section. Many people who created industries of different levels were either born in Italy or their descendants. In this case, Torquato Di Tella came very young, at a very young age, and eventually created an electrodomestic factory that produced these refrigerators. You've probably never seen one, but if you go to many Argentine houses that keep, because they can last more than 50 years. With the ball, we had one that belonged to my great aunts from the 40s or 50s. Not sure, they really last a long time. And this is not a freezer; it's just the refrigerator. And that's the other model. But they also made cars, but in much less quantity. But if you imagine, 500,000 homes had this type of refrigerator. Then, well, the family continues very active in different things. Now they have a university, very important family, Di Tella. And those who are familiar with the oil industry, the father of the production of benzene and oil is Enrique Mosconi. His father came as an engineer, and he built the railway that went in east-west in the central Argentina. Mosconi. Musicians. How are we doing? Oh, my. You want to do a break? There are some, yes. Yeah.
From some of the documents that you showed earlier this week, there seems to have been a spirit of hospitality that is greater than the United States, vis-a-vis Argentina. They seem to have had a much more welcoming attitude towards it. And I'm just wondering if the language that had an influence there.
That's a good question. Yes, the issue, one can say, well, but it was welcoming to anyone. The Italian, the familiarity between the Italian language and Spanish is an important element. The fact that many of the immigrants were Catholic, as was the vast majority of people in Argentina, is also a very important element. But also it was an attitude of the ruling classes that really wanted people to come and work, people to come and produce and create and do all these things. This is the end of the 19th century, is a time of enormous changes. Everything was like boom, 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 inventions, and everything was bringing new things, recreating new things, new machines, and I guess it was, you wouldn't say because of interest, but there was really a need for that. The population was very small, so, and the land was vast. And the opportunities. But it definitely, that's the thing. It was very welcoming, and the Hotel de Inmigrantes, that you could stay with room and board, that you could only leave when you had a place to live, sounds very decent, but it was not only because they didn't want people to go around asking for money in the streets, but because they wanted that people could begin contributing day one. Really, you get a job, and you go to the section where they will offer you a job, you get a job, and you leave and you go and begin working there. So that too, but very welcoming, and I'm glad that you caught them, that you caught the message. Okay, the music is an area where Italians have found a place for ingraining themselves and also contributing enormously. My big surprise there is the first one that I put on the list, okay? Because in the early times, Italians were doing trade along the Paraná River and Uruguay River. There are many settlements with Italian communities there, and I found out that this very famous musician from the province of Corrientes, Cocomarola, this last name, where is it from? It doesn't look that Spanish to me. And I looked, well, his parents were from Puglia. Both of them were from Puglia, yeah. We were doing the break, I'm sorry. You just have to tell me because, okay, 5-minute break.
Martin Giesso. Thank you, everyone. May I have your attention? We're continuing once again with Martin Giesso's presentation. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to continue. This is going to be much shorter than the first part. So do not worry that much. So. You might say, why is this so focused on a few aspects? Well, architecture, my father, my brother are architects. I have a deep connection with architecture. Music, again, who doesn't love music? And it's an essential part of human life and culture. So when I discovered that Mario del Tránsito Cocomarola had his parents were from Puglia, I said, wow, this turned my head around. Even some of his songs are Spanish and Guarani, the two languages together. We're not going to listen to them. And his most famous one is Kilómetro 11, the 11th kilometer, that is like a national anthem for the province where he was born. Saluzzi, I really don't know anything about him, but obviously with that name, ring a bell. And then Josecito, Jose Berardi, he's from the Pampa region in southern Córdoba, and he has a song, Mi Abuelo Gringo. What does the word gringo mean? Gringo in that part of, and it really, I read about it. It comes from the word, from Greek, that when people heard someone speaking in Greek, of course, they didn't understand anything. So from there, the word derived. So gringo is anyone who speaks in a language that you cannot understand. And there it meant the people from Piemonte, that's the region where there are many Piemontese communities. So mi abuelo, mi nono gringo, I think that's the other name for that song. But there must be others. At that point, really, I mean, I had dived so much that I said, well, let's leave it there, because tango is much easier. Tango really, I mean, you can think anywhere from Piazzolla down, the names like spot everywhere. So in this photo we have Ángel D'Agostino, Juan D'Arienzo, very famous composer and director, and Aníbal Troilo, the one famous because he played the bandoneon, very, very famous. They all died, of course, several decades ago. And then I listed some of the other very, very famous names, the Caro brothers, Discepolo. Here in Chicago, I met someone with that last name. Armando Discepolo wrote some of the finest letters of tango. Omero Esposito, probably from Naples because of the last name. Contursi, Canaro, Greco, Ponzio, Firpo. Those are the Disabili. So, what did they do? Many of them had parents that were somehow musicians, probably informal musicians, and they learned the music from very young and contributed in many, many ways to the, because in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, there was a lot going on about the tango. Then after that, it declined, and now it's recovering a little bit. The first sound move in Argentina, tango also, if you look at the poster and you see all of these names, Maisani, Tita Merello, very famous singer, Simone, Sandrini, Vignoli, it goes on and on, Juan D'Arienzo again, who appeared before, and the film director Mentasti, he was born in Varese, in northern Italy. And this is just a tiny example, the translation on the left, on the right. Ticke, Giuseppe the shoemaker spends all day happy man there chewing the cigar and economizing because he wants his son to study to become a doctor. This was a very common expression, mi hijo el doctor. The goal was that the son of the immigrants could go to the university and get a professional degree. At that time it was physician, engineer, lawyer. Those were the three key things. So that I make all of this effort in order to give the possibility that my child become a doctor. In the world of the academic music or classical music, as you know, and there were several composers wrote operas with, curiously, many of these composers used popular folkloric tunes in their work. So in a sense, they became part of the movement of what is called the nationalistic music that tells you about the people, the country. The most famous one is Aurora. There's a song, the operas were in Italian. The song in Aurora that was translated to Spanish and became the national the anthem to the flag. So all of the children in Argentina sing Aurora when they enter in school every morning. So this was composed by Héctor Paniza. There's a book about him. He was the son of immigrants, and he was very successfully abroad. That's why sometimes he is called Ettore Paniza, even though he was born in Argentina. A picture of the opera theater. So when in between the two Colón theaters, this one was an important place for singers and orchestras to play. Skip that one. This is an example of one of these palaces, these wonderful houses that Mr. Cecchi built. Just briefly, how do we pronounce Italian words in Argentina? Sometimes in Italian, sometimes like if it were Spanish. I guess many people would say Ceci, or Chessi. It's hard to tell. But there's no rule. So Mr. Devoto, who was an industrialist, became very wealthy, bought a big piece of land in the western part of the city, and then he subdivided it, and Mr. Cecchi bought this block and had this very beautiful house built. Now they're restoring it. There are many of these so-called palaces there. I'm jumping from one thing to the other. But during both wars, there were young men, or probably also young women too, who went to the consulates to become, to volunteer to go to the war. In the First World War, it's estimated that between 25 and 30,000 people left for Italy to fight in 1915 when Italy declared the war. For the Second World War, less. There are more studies about the English that went in the Second World War than Italians. Eduardo Olivero, he went in the First World War. He was a pilot in the Servizio Aeronautico. He survived the war, and then in 1926 he was the first person to go from New York to Buenos Aires by plane. Imagine, it took him 81 days. Of course, he must have stopped in many places for several days. It's not that he had an urgency to get there, but he was the first. I cannot even think how the plane was, but it very likely for one or two people, and risky. This was even before Italo Balbo. There's a photo of Olivero. I didn't know anything about Olivero. This is totally new to me. And there was the case that one of these young men was by father French and by mother Italian. So he went to the French consulate and they said, no, you cannot join. So when Italy joined the war, he went to the Italian consulate and they said, yes, you can. So he went to fight. So all of these stories people are trying to recover them. And
So if they were fighting for Italy, were they fighting with Mussolini?
no, in the
But
First
then
World
it says
War.
that they went to the UK and France, which is the Allied forces.
No, First World War.
Yeah.
The second, no, I don't know anything about who went there. No, they would go for the Allies in the Second World War.
Because then they weren't fighting for Italy, because Italy was with Mussolini. Okay.
Yeah, by the way, there's going to be a presentation in early June from Italy by Zoom from a Italian scholar who studies who studied the role of Italo-Americans who went to Italy to fight in the Second World War. That might be very interesting for many of you. I think it's June 6th. June 6th. D-Day, June 6th. He's at the university in Naples. He published a book, it's in Italian, so he's wanting to find the money to translate it to English. Something also about the role of the Catholic Church in Argentina. The Italians, of course, did significant contributions because in the second half of the 19th century there were many new orders were founded, included the ones that you probably know, that Mother Cabrini founded, that Giambattista Scalabrini founded, and there was an enormous movement of the church to evangelize or many churches were built in many parts of Argentina, really amazing. But the first, and again by family tradition, is the work of the order founded by Don Bosco. I guess some of you might have heard of Don Bosco. Well, in Argentina, he's like very, very popular, very popular. In 1875, he sent the first group there, and they had a very important action, education, things. They even went to to Patagonia. Then in 1895, Mother Cabrini, who had already been in the US, she came to Argentina via Chile, which again, another difficult enterprise. At that time, there was no train, so all by mule and crossing the Andes. So she found a series of schools and houses in different cities of Argentina, not only Buenos Aires. So she was there twice, as you see. And then in 1901, they founded this school in the town of Villa General Mitre. In 1901, that I didn't know, Giovanni Battista Scalabrini did go to Argentina for a brief period of time because, of course, he went to visit his brother, Pietro, who had been in Argentina for like 30 years and working for as a teacher, professor, universities. Pietro Scalabrini. They had 3 brothers. The other one went to Brazil. The son of Pietro was a very famous writer, historian in Argentina. The first names sort of slipped my mind, but well, in any case, there's a street with, in his honor, there's a subway stop with Scalabrini's honor for his Pietro's son. Raúl Scalabrini Ortiz? I don't remember. Okay, and then in 1921 and 34, Don Orione. Has anybody heard of Don? Now he's a saint, but at that time my grandmother, after Don Bosco came Don Orione, but because Don Orione was there, the connection was much closer. Don Orione. There's another very important thing, is the Maria Auxiliadora. In Argentina, there are many churches for Maria Auxiliadora, who was the image that Don Bosco and his followers were close to. I don't know the verb exactly for what that is. So in any case, very important. There were other orders, but one would have to do more thing. But by World War II, practically all of the bishops, cardinals, and of course many, many priests who were of Italian origin. So a very important part of the church in Argentina was, why was that? Because again, they were the largest group. They didn't have to wait for the other, like in the US, that different waves of immigrants came, and when the Italians came, they were all Irish, all of the bishops, and you had to wait until they passed away so that the new thing. No, there it was much easier to achieve, more welcoming, as Leo would say. This is a photo, the one in the middle, I didn't take it, but these 2 I did. Scalabrini. This is the Church of the Immigrants in La Boca, and the virgin that protects the immigrants. And this is the so-called La Iglesia de los Italianos, probably because there were masses in Italian, and that's where the Don Bosco group came to establish there. But okay, and this again is just to see this connection and how it was relatively easier to go up as they went up in the hierarchies of the church, in the army, to in the government, the national government. So here I listed the presidents that were elected democratically, because you know that there were others who were not elected democratically. So, and their wives and vice presidents. Probably some of you might sound familiar, but beginning with Dolores Costa, Gaetano Costa, her father was an immigrant in the 1830s, and she married Urquiza, who built that beautiful house that you saw at the very beginning all pink, painted pink. That's where she lived. So that might be one of the reasons why he had it built in a style that evoked Italian countryside. Vice President Santiago Derqui, the name was changed to be able to say, if not people would say Derci. Derci, that sounds not good. Agustin Pedro Justo, he was Giusto, that's the original name, and they had come from Gibraltar because many Italians, well, not some Italian communities lived in southern Spain and they came from there. Pistarini, this is not very relevant, but that's the official name of the airport. Okay? People call it Ezeiza. That was the name of the family that owned the lands, but it's Ministro Pistarini. Arturo Frondizi was a very important president. Arturo Ilia, people say Ilia, and his vice president, Perete. Hector Campora, Daniel Scioli, not Scioli, and you probably have heard of Mauricio Macri. So in these two cases, both the president and the vice president are of Italian ancestry. And you know who Javier Milei is. You've heard about him.
Yes.
And he even has the dual citizenship. So again, why is that? Well, because the political system is relatively open, more open, so that sons of immigrants here in the US, it's much rarer that the son of an immigrant would become president. There are probably 2 or 3 cases max. We're getting close. So, and this is a funny thing that I saw, and I said the current governors of Argentina and the national origin of their families. In green, the Italians, so always again in the central part. But as you see, Spanish, Arabic, German, who's German? Russian Jew and Croatians. These are intermediate level immigrations. The Arabs came from the Ottoman Empire when it was crumbling. So there are many. They say that around 3 million people have that ancestry. Germans, there aren't that many. Jews, usually from Europe, it's also a significant community. The Croatians, not much spoken about, but yes, there is a large community. Okay, this is something that is, again, is interesting. I knew that Caruso had been in Argentina before coming to the US. But I said, well, I'm going to look for more examples. And then I found Puccini had come before coming to the US. So then I added these other very famous, Rufo Tita, Gigi, who doesn't know him, Tito Schipa. He was there 13 times. So, but one thing is very important, because Argentina is in the southern hemisphere. The season, the opera season, is the opposite to the northern hemisphere. So when the season ends in the north, then they could go to the south without any overlap of interests. But also because of the size and wealth of the Italian community, and Oriundi especially, middle class, upper middle class. And there were many entrepreneurs who did the contracts and were in contact with these people to bring them. And some of the opera theaters, Colón en Opera in Buenos Aires, Teatro Argentino in La Plata, who unfortunately burned down in the 70s, El Círculo in Rosario, Rivera in Darte in Córdoba. So many of them went to 3 or 4 different places even Tucumán, which is farther north. But again, by railway, they were easy reach. So again, this in a short paragraph shows the importance of classical music and the attraction that the Argentina had for different groups and singers and composers. I couldn't find any other composer that would have gone. Verdi, of course, not. Leoncavallo didn't go. But if anyone knows of another one that I could add to the list. And high-ranking visits to Argentina, again, to show this thing. No Italian king came to the US or crown prince, but Umberto visited Argentina in 1924, and he went to all of these places. And then 5 years later, he came to the US. And Pacelli, I knew about Pacelli because there was a very important Eucharistic Congress in '34, and he was there. 5 years later, he became Pope Pius II. So again, this. Well, we got to the end. This here I put so that you get a glance some of the books that I referred to, which is my favorite one, as I mentioned, Bailey's Immigrants in the Land of Promise, Italians in Buenos Aires. Devoto is is a treatise, quite dense. Historia de los Argentinos, de los Italianos en Argentina is difficult to read because it includes many people with different things. And Family Search is the webpage that you can go to. ChiseOnline.it is the webpage where you can find who left Italy for the Americas. Antenati Beni Culturali is where you find birth, marriage, and death certificates, sections of different small and large cities. So there is quite a lot of information there, mostly not not transferred, so you have to look page by page. But again, resources that can guide you. Then there are, of course, many articles and other sources. You can barely see what there is, but different scholars have tried to figure out the issue of the segregation, and they have done studies of sections of cities looking at who lived in each house, and then by statistical procedures determine which cities a group was more segregated than other. So in other words, that they lived among themselves and had few others living around them. And what is, you might already visualize, the least segregated city is for Italians in the first census of 1855. That's the list, and you see other Germans in St. Louis, Spaniards in Buenos Aires. Strange, that might sound awkward, but the Spanish were more segregated. English in New York, Irish, well, it's that's what this is about. Again, looking at the integration of these communities, and for ownership, this is the last thing. This chart indicates the home ownership comparing Argentina and the US for Italian immigrants. As you see, with more years of immigration, the probabilities of getting your home is much higher, but it was still much higher in Argentina than in the US. And the occupation in unskilled profession is the opposite, goes in the opposite direction. So there were more unskilled laborers here than in Argentina. But those are, obviously there is a connection between one thing and the other. In order to have a property, you need to have a certain wealth, and that wealth very likely comes from more skilled activities, higher salaries, and so on. So in a chart, everything is sort of condensed and summarized. So this is it. I hope I got the message through. The Argentine consulate does not have anything to do with this. I'm not promoting you to go to buy an airplane ticket to Argentina now. No, that's not the case, but you might be curious. Again, I thank everybody very much for having stayed here until the end. I hope I got the message through, and if you have any question, comment, I'll try to.
First of all,
I'm amazed at the fact that the northern Italians went to South America rather than to the United States.
Yeah, well, that's a very hard. It's a very hard question to answer. Why did people go to one place and not to the other? Once the migration begins, then it's easier to understand. The so-called chain migration was very important. I mean, people in general, not everybody, but you go to a place where you have someone that you know of, and sometimes they even send letters and said, I have a job waiting for you, please come, things like that. But at the beginning, the beginning of this movement, why was that? I don't have an answer to your question. Can anybody think of any?
Did some of the Italian immigrants from the South go to Argentina to
Maybe.
wait to come to the United States? But I think while they were waiting, they just said, hey, this is pretty good, and they decided to stay. Because in my in-law family, my sister's in-laws, her husband had cousins that were in Argentina, and supposedly they were going there to wait to come to the United States. I don't know how many children there were, maybe 8 or 9 of his cousins, but 4 of the younger ones actually got to the United States and stayed here. And then the parents came over, but they knew that there were always, relatives in Argentina. So they stayed.
They stayed.
Yeah.
So the question would be, when they went to Argentina, was that a sort of a trampoline to? If it were after 1924, I would say probably yes, because as you know, in 1924 the rules changed, and there was a quota for people from the Mediterranean region. So it was difficult to get in.
Yeah.
In fact, Dominic's father could not come to the US.
So the 4
That's an
younger
interesting
children came, but they were adults by the time they got here. I mean, the younger children.
So,
the language. What about the language? Maybe I'm speaking for Italian people who decided to go to Argentina.
Yeah.
Probably easier than Spanish, than English, and so this could be also a reason.
yeah. And they probably knew that in the US, there was a majority of Protestants, that Catholics were sometimes not very welcome in some areas. Things like that, it's difficult to tell. And basically when one emigrates, and I'm saying this for me, you really don't, I doubt that many people have it clear what is going to be your future, what are your plans. I guess it's, you work on these things as things happen, to you. Or,
To your comment, that's exactly what happened with my father. He had put in for the quota to come to the United States, and he was waiting, and so in the meantime, he went to Argentina because he had cousins and a sister and an aunt. So while he was, and there was really nothing in their village of 1,000 people and a bunch of sheep. So when he was 18, he went there, he stayed for 10 years, and then when he got in via the quota, then he was able to emigrate to the United States. But he did the whole ship from, where did you leave, from Napoli or Genova? Genova. So he was on that ship for, months. And,
yes.
Go ahead, it's your
See,
experience.
that time, the American people, they could come over here free. But the European or the Italian, because I was my mother was born in America, made me a petition, I was 21. I had to wait 7 years for the quota, because Italian quota was 250,000 people. I had to wait that long. But going in Argentina, they don't give you a right to come over here. They don't give you the right.
No, but it's just like you were already on the list to come here, and you're like, you know what, maybe I'll go try my luck in Argentina.
J. Edgar Hoover did it.
Yeah, thanks,
Put the
man.
quarters down, yeah.
Thanks.
And the embassy in Buenos Aires, they asked me if I was married. I said no. If you married an Argentine girl, you will go in there with 2 months.
Yeah.
I told to my cousin who was in there, with 2 months I was over here with him and wife and 2 children, and I still had to wait because the wife was Argentina. They could come with the wife.
Yeah. Huh. That was wild.
It was very complicated. Well, everyone Italian, we had our own problem, different kinds.
So have you ever
Come
gone
over
back
here.
to Argentina?
What?
Have you ever returned to Argentina to visit?
Oh yeah. We went, me, my brother, and my wife, and we were 6 persons. Because I still have in there my brother-in-law, because my sister passed away, and 2 children. Each one of them they had 4 children. I went in 1999.
Oh,
Yeah.
good
We
for
went in
you.
there for a couple of weeks.
So you summer in the United States, and then you winter in Argentina. It's a good deal.
Wasn't bad.
I had one extra summer from to Italy, go to Argentina, because I went in there in November. And then there became a summer in there. But then I lost when I came over here. It was in November I came over here. After 10 years, was opposite. I left the warm and I came over here and finally come.
You gained one, you lost one.
Yeah, and you come to Chicago and you never know what the weather's going to be. You know? Wait a few minutes, it'll change.
When I got to Chicago Midway, it was 2 feet of snow.
Really? Yeah.
And my family brought, because they were over here already, he brought me a jacket, otherwise I would freeze. See, I had been in there during the part of the Peron time. I've been in Argentina. Great country. Beautiful.
You're actually the theater.
That's beautiful.
Another question? Yes.
Well, you said that they were promised land, right? Could that
The
have been
land
a
of
big
promise.
attraction?
The land of promise, no, that
No, they were promised to be given land.
Yes, the fact that they knew they would have a piece of land to work, and they would be given certain elements to begin, because the beginning of agriculture is very rough. So, yeah, that I guess was very important.
But was this in Buenos Aires or
No,
outside?
in the countryside.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people went to these offices of the government or of companies where they would explain them what they were offering, and yeah, they had a relative idea what they were expecting. Those who came to the city, no, it was a little bit more undetermined unless they had relatives and things. Yeah, but
But I mean, that could have been a reason
A
why
reason,
more
yes.
people.
exactly.
And about the north and south, were the people in the north, did they have more skills than the people in the south?
Difference.
It's not certain if there was a higher percentage of skilled people from the north. It's not very clear that that was the case.
Just one more question.
Well, they
We
obviously
saw that
needed both. People from the
architecture
south were
was very
primarily
much
agrarian, so they were farmers
due
and
to
really
Italian
kind of
architects.
uneducated, but they
Origin.
needed somebody to work the land.
But what I
So-
was wondering was if in your research you found something about other kind of artists with Italian origins or Italian that moved to Argentina and that they experienced their activities in Argentina, like painters or writers or poets or even sculptures. Because we have a friend of ours that spent almost 12 years in Argentina when he was child, that is now is a renowned painter and sculptor and poet in Italy, and whose name is Domingo Notaro.
Notaro.
And he is 85 now, right now.
Okay. Yes, there are. I mean, I didn't include them, but I have some knowledge about. Yeah, yes, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Oh, did you have a question?
The cemetery that you showed us the pictures of, is that outside of the city? It's not where like Evita Perón and the cemetery downtown, is that on the outskirts?
No, that's in a small city called Azul. It's like 300, 400 kilometers south of Buenos Aires. I have never been to Azul, but it's a very important agricultural city. Yeah, I can't imagine how, not being there tall buildings, you would see that enormous construction from everywhere. Yeah, the cemetery.
It must have been an easier transition to go to Argentina, basically because the language was much more similar. I mean, a lot of it, you can speak Spanish or Italian and you can still understand each other. But to come to the United States, it's a whole different, Yeah, because I'm trying to learn Italian and I still can't get it. I mean, I can pick out words, but.
Especially written, if you have the signs,
Completely
it's
different
written.
language, but more similar to Spanish. So I would guess that that's why a lot of them stayed.
Thank you, for your presentation. He's one of our most thorough researchers here at Casa Italia.